Hi everyone. There's a podium, but that felt awkward, so I'm just gonna stand here. Hi. Thank you so much for coming through. Welcome to the inaugural Residents Town Hall for Chinatown, DC. Um, Looking around this room, it really feels amazing to know that this really is centering so many of the longstanding community members here in this very important enclave. My name is Ren Lee. I'm part of one of the founding members of the Save Chinatown Solidarity Network, and I'm here with many of my fellow volunteers and activists, and we're just so thrilled that we have such great representation from so many different communities and organizations. Because all of you are so beautiful, I get nervous, so I'm going to start reading on my page so that I don't forget anything. So thank you again for co-sponsoring Bread for the City. Can I get a hand raise? Hello, thank you. And then the Asian Pacific American Legal Resource Center. Thank you. You all do tremendous work, so thank you so much. The Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance Center. Gorgeous. And then our legal counsel for the elderly. Thank you so much. I also want to say thank you for representatives from the mayor's office and also Brookton's office. Thank you for coming and hearing. There have been many town halls this week, as we know, around Chinatown. To me, this is my favorite town hall, and I think elevating some of the voices that are here and continuing to discuss and really understand what is at stake and what can be part of that progress as we redevelop and create a new future for this enclave is super important. So thank you again. And I want to say that the question at hand for me is there's a lot of progress that we talk about. And for it not to be hyperbole, it has to include community. And the main focus for the network, for the Save Chinatown DC network, is to really center some of those voices that can be diminished, have been diminished. So we're thinking about our low-income, working-class communities, our immigrant communities, those communities that might have barriers to be able to be present typically. So the fact that we have translation services here, that this beautiful community of our elders is here with us, my heart is beating fast with happiness. And this is what it's all about. I will also say the question that I want to pose for everyone in this room to think about is, we are in the nation's capital. What is Chocolate City without our Black community? Truly. And what is Chinatown without our Chinese community? There's going to be a lot of discussion around this, and it will mean something different for each of you, and it all matters. And I think what is most important is to hear directly from them. I go to a lot of hearings, I go to a lot of planning task forces, and I see a lot of rhetoric, but they're not actually coming from conversation. They're not actually coming from not just translating language, but the things that people are saying they need, that there's challenged with. How do you translate that in the rhetoric that makes sense for policy, for budget, for development? These are the translations that we need from our representatives. So that, again, is what is that task today. I think, let's see, from my paper. So DC Chinatown, we talked a little bit about the importance of being in the nation's capital. Well, Chinatown here has served to be a safe haven for immigrant communities for a long time. And often the Asian American, Pacific Islander, Native Hawaiian communities are, even if we are part of the American fabric, we are Americana out loud, we are here in place. We've been here for, just in terms of documentation on the streets of DC, Chinatown has been here since the 1880s. So this is 150 years of history. And so again, just knowing that these enclaves matter and just having Chinese letters that are really, another chain business isn't gonna cut it. You've all seen the pamphlet. There are 15 Chinese businesses that serve this working class community today in Chinatown. We're pouring hundreds of millions of dollars here. Where is the centering of this community that has made it so rich and so diverse and so wonderful to be in this district? And then I think, we have multiple voices that will be joining us, and so they'll be talking a lot more in detail. But I think for me, we just want to emphasize that in Chinatown, the heartbeat of this community is not entertainment centers, it's not wealthy people coming in and out. It is the community that is here, that is entrenched, and the new community members that will come respect that and create what is next together. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop talking and let's hear from Nashra, and then we'll have Chad Joy and Zoe as well. So thank you, and if you could come up and introduce yourself, that
would be amazing. Thank you, Ren, and hi everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Nashra Ahmed, and I'm an attorney with the Asian Pacific American Legal Resource Center. Our office works with the tenants associations of Museum Square and Wallach House, and has been for a really long time. Generally, our mission at the Asian Pacific American Legal Resource Center, we're a civil legal services nonprofit, and we serve low-income Asian Americans throughout the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area. The APA-LRC's mission is to advance the civil and legal rights of AAPI folks by providing linguistically accessible and culturally appropriate services. Today, we're going to talk a lot about why those services are important and how they are lacking in the DC community. We have a lot of services, but it's never enough. So I want to talk a little bit briefly about our history as an organization working with Museum Square and Wallach House, because it's been a very, very long time. So we actually helped form the Wallach House Tenants Association back in 2008. And that's when we started working with them. We've been supporting them with their legal needs ever since then. For Museum Square, we started working together in 2013 when the owners of Museum Square tried to illegally oust all of their low-income tenants. Ever since then, we've been supporting the Museum Square Tenants Association with all of their needs. These are the only two low-income buildings in all of DC that have a majority Asian American population. So these tenant associations require a lot more support than they generally receive. I'm so excited today that APA-LRC is sponsoring this town hall with the Save Chinatown Solidarity Network and a lot of the other incredible organizations that are here today. This is a really important opportunity for all of us to learn from the tenants in this neighborhood and learn from the working class residents that make up Chinatown. Wallach House and Museum Square specifically are part of the essential fabric of this neighborhood, and Chinatown is an amazing part of our city, and these residents are extremely important to our city. Like I mentioned earlier, Chinatown and DC have a lot of services, but it's not enough. It's not enough for the people that live here. And despite being in Chinatown, there really is a distinct lack of culturally appropriate services and linguistically accessible services for the majority elderly Chinese residents. We need a lot more interpretation services like we have here today. We need a lot more cultural services in the area, and we need things like a grocery store, bare minimum things that people need to survive. The APA-LRC is really proud to partner with the network and all the organizations that are here today. So now I will hand it off to Brett for the city.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chad Sinkler, and I'm a move and lawyering attorney with Bread for the City. Bread for the City is a nonprofit here in DC that provides food, clothing, medical care, legal services, and social services to DC residents. Now, as a movement lawyering attorney, it's my job to work with communities that are organizing to build power. And that's why I'm so excited to be here in a space with everybody, where people are doing exactly that, coming together to build power. Now, everyone who's living in DC knows that gentrification is rampant across all of DC, and it's causing displacement everywhere you look. Right now, the average one-bedroom apartment goes for over $2,000. 1 in 10 DC residents are housing insecure. People are waiting for years on wait lists to get affordable housing. And the affordable housing stock that this is crumbling right now, is falling apart. And then when that happens, what we know happens after that is that those buildings, they get knocked down, they get replaced, and the new people come in. So I think a perfect example of that for right for the city is Berry Farm. Since after the Civil War, Berry Farm was a thriving Black community. It was one of the first Black public housing sites in the country. The people of Berry Farm built DC and built this culture that we have. They started the National Welfare Rights Organization. They were the first plaintiffs in civil rights cases. They started go-go music. They were the people that made DC what it is. But now, Berry Farm, the city let it go. They let it go bad, they let it go into disrepair, and they knocked it down. And now people are displaced. And their plan is to build new housing with fixed, and people are going to be displaced. That's the bottom line. I think something similar is happening here in Chinatown. I think at one point there were 3,000 people here in Chinatown, China North, and now there's only 300, less than 300. But I think, even though that sounds bleak, I think what gives me hope is the fact that we are here together. There are people who love their community, who are willing to fight for their community, who are willing to come together as a team, to talk to the people who have the power, to change the things that need to be changed, to build the power to stay in place, to make sure that you can be here and have a thriving community that we love. So I want to pass it to Robert, who's also the president.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Robert Hart, and I'm one of the advocacy core leaders for advocating for housing in Redwood City. And we've been campaigning around housing in the city ever since I've been, since 2015. So it's one of 10 years of my campaign for housing. And this is what I wrote down. This is kind of Confucianism, is what I call it. I like to open by introducing myself and say, I'm Robert. Mark short. First, I want to rebuke cynicism. Cynicism is a feeling of distrust or that something isn't going to work out. I recently learned in discussion with DC fiscal policy that roughly 1,500 households here in the district control roughly $185 million. The city's population is 671,803. 1,500 families have more wealth than everybody else combined. As we have this discussion, I want to put an analogy in your mind. The forest was shrinking, but the trees kept voting for the axe. For the axe was clever and convinced the trees that because her helmet was made of wood, she was one of them. So keep that in your mind. Just because people come and talk to you, if they don't take your words into consideration, then they're pandering to you. And we know, as Chad has mentioned, that we once had roughly 3,000 people, now it's down to roughly like 300. And so we see that Chinatown is shrinking, and we're the nation's capital. We're supposed to represent the nation. There's over 50 Chinatowns in America, and they all are going through the same type of process. So my prayer to everyone in here is to hold these officials accountable. We're supposed to come together and work together to build the Chinatown that we all can live in, not just the wealthy, but the people that are behind the development. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for all the work you do day in, day out. Truly, truly inspiring. Also, remember I said you were all so good looking, I was nervous up here? Well, I forgot to thank the most important group, which is our amazing residents. Thank you so much. You know, there's been an incredible amount of challenges faced by this community. We talked about it, 90% plus displacement. And these have been waves that are ongoing. Every single time this wave happens, another one is coming and it's a torpedo. And we think about just, the first enclaves of Chinatown expanded much further than what we see today, right? And we think about the Washington Convention Center, what it meant for the displacement then, what it meant when the metro was open for another displacement wave, what it meant with the Capital One Arena, what's needed today, right now, as we cling on. But this is not a story about losing. This is not a story about erasure. This is a story of a community that is strong and resilient and has been finding legal recourse, activism, protest, playing together. And it is incredibly inspiring and just an honor for me to be here and working alongside. So thank you, and another applause for our residents. With that, a short story, just because some folks really know this and some folks don't, we want to make sure that Zoe can come and talk a little bit more about the history and what is really at stake today.
And folks have already done a great job highlighting some of the main points that we wanted to underscore today. But just to set the stage a little further and to paint a picture of some of the history of the neighborhood where we find ourselves. Next slide, please. We want to first, again, acknowledge that this is not an exhaustive history and that the situation that we find ourselves in is deeply intertwined with other communities of color from DC, namely Black and Brown communities. But the story we want to tell of Chinese and Asian immigrants here in Chinatown starts with struggle, even in the face of the 1882 Exclusion Act. The first Chinatown was set up along Pennsylvania, closer to the capital, and then because of urban renewal and federal building projects, that community was displaced and moved here to the ancient High Street blocks where we sit tonight. And from the 30s to the 70s, Chinese family and business associations that you see pictured here, like the Chinese Youth Club, Courtesy Patrol, and Creative Workshop, built community life and traditions, including an annual H Street volleyball tournament in Chinatown, began becoming the thriving cultural and community club that it is today. And then, as we talked about, with the development of the MCI Center, now known as Capital One Arena, and the intense development that followed, again, with the population went from once being over 3,000 to just closer to 300 Chinese and Asian American residents here in Chinatown. But groups like Eastern Wind organized to challenge the displacement then, and as Nashra mentioned, Wallach House was built with city support in the face of those projects. And now Chinatown here is one of the fastest shrinking, and we are still facing waves of displacement and intimidation. Now many of the residents have been pushed out to Maryland and Virginia, Mount Vernon and Noma, but we have there is the Chinatown Task Force was created by Mayor Bowser at the beginning of this year, and then a couple months later, the announcement of the Downtown Action Plan was also published. And next slide, we just just down the street at Museum Square on K Street. It is a 300-unit property where many of the remaining residents and workers in Chinatown live. But as a result of a decade-long displacement plan by the landlord Bush companies, 75% of that building is vacant. Only 60 residents remain, some of whom we'll hear from tonight. And as affordable housing dwindles, we continue to hear the cry for better support for our unhoused neighbors in Chinatown as well, including a strengthened day services center, improved shelters, public bathrooms, and an end to encampment evictions. And now, with fewer and fewer businesses centering the needs of the Chinese community in Chinatown, there's only 15 left. No grocery stores, you mentioned, providing affordable and accessible Chinese food and cooking ingredients. And we're awaiting zoning decisions on a proposed hotel development that would lead to the displacement of businesses like Key and Galia Hair Salon and reduce the amount of retail that would be required on the 500 block of H Street. So we're really glad to have you all here tonight for a conversation, and this discussion is needed now more than ever. So thanks so much for your support.
So we will move into panel with Jen, who will be moderating. I want to just remind everyone that we also have a cohort listening in with the Zoom. So as you speak, please do speak into the mic so they can hear us. Jen, hi, where are you? There you are, okay.
Hi everyone, good evening. Thank you again for joining us. I also want to highlight we have two incredible interpreters here this evening. Raise your hand. We have high-tech technology in here, and so they are miking in directly to our residents who need that interpretation. As we all come up here, and I invite all the panelists to come up right now for us to speak a little bit slower too, so our interpreters can catch up with our conversation. But as I have everyone come up here and introduce themselves, I'll first introduce me. My day job, I am a design director at OpenBox, and we are a Black and Asian-led urban design studio. And we center communities in all aspects of how we build our cities and our neighborhoods. And I've had the pleasure and privilege to be working with many folks in this room today to really understand the past and present history and experiences of all of you all here. What I know as Chinatown is something really big. The experiences, what you all do collectively, the people that you live here, the histories and stories are what really connect me. 1882 Foundation in particular has really big parts in helping me understand the rich culture and communities that are here and bring this place to life. So as we have a conversation today, the remainder of this time is we're going to invite our panelists who are involved in a range of different Chinatown and downtown revitalization projects, as well as we're gonna have that conversation. I'll ask a few questions, the how, the what, the why, about the task force, the downtown action plan, for instance. We'll do that for about 40 minutes, and then we'll have some time to also then have a question and answer from the audience for 15 minutes. Before we do that also is, as the panelists have trickled in, we first want to make space for Chinatown residents to be able to have also speak their feedback and the issues and concerns that are affecting them today. So as I call out, I'll first introduce those tenant speakers. If you each want to come up to the floor, we'll start with that, and then we'll have our panel conversation. So Jenny Zhou, Lin Young Ru from Museum Square,
大家下午好，
Good afternoon, everyone.
我是住在401K 博物馆广场的业主租户，我叫建立。
My name is Jenny. I am a resident at 401K Street, Museum Square.
我今天非常荣幸来到这里开大会。首先，我非常感谢衷心的感谢市长的办公室所有的工作人员和长期为我们博物馆广场的租户不辞辛苦的石小姐团队和律师团队们，非常感谢。
I'm very honored to be here at this town hall. First of all, I'd like to thank the mayor's office, all the staff from the mayor's office for your help, and also want to thank all those people, teams who have been helping our residents in my building for all these time. That include Shani Shi and all the lawyers.
我本人来到美国将近20年，也住在博物馆广场将近20年。这里的变化给我们带来了很多，我会非常的感谢他们对我们支持。今天我站在这里，对大家感谢所有支持我们博物馆广场的，还有爱护对我们 Chinatown 的将近就现在的 Chinatown 变成了不繁华，而且我们住在这里也很担心。现在的博物馆广场，我们住在这边都久不久，这个业主就对我们说：“哎呀，你们要搬走，你们要怎么样？”而且对我们不太关心。但是
I've been living at the Museum Square for 20 years. I am very grateful for all the improvements that people have helped us to achieve at the Museum Square. Thank you for all your support. However, we're also concerned as residents at the Museum Square because once in a while, the owner of the building will tell us, you need to move now.
我们华人住在这里，也是遵纪守法，参加了各种的工作，因为我们华人在这里受到美国政府的保护、宪法的保护。我们华人在这里，因为就在 Chinatown 落脚。为什么呢？就是因为我们的语言的障碍，无法跟美国主流沟通，所以说 Chinatown 是我们的最好的落脚点。
And as a Chinese resident, we abide by law. We participate in all the civil activities. Chinese Americans are protected by the U.S. law, by the Constitution. The reason we choose to live in Chinatown is because we have the language barrier. It is difficult for us to communicate with the mainstream society. So Chinatown is our best landing place.
首先 ，Chinatown 是我们先辈在这里开创的，Chinatown 也是受美国政府的保护，所以说我们就去尽可能的在这里能保护好我们对华人在这里生根，继续的生根下去。
Chinatown was established by our ancestors. Chinatown is protected by the U.S. government. So we need to make sure that Chinatown will maintain it as a rooting place for the Chinese American community.
所以说要保护好 Chinatown 是我们华人的最主要的。现在的 Chinatown 繁华，游客也是冲着 Chinatown 有一个好地方，而且 Chinatown 是距离白宫国会最近的地方。
We have the responsibility to protect Chinatown. We know the reason tourists are attracted to Chinatown is because of the vigorousness of Chinatown. And this is in a very close proximity to the White House, to the Congress.
所以我们华人希望DC的政府所有的人能帮助我们华人保留好 Chinatown。 China 的中国文化，也让我们Chinatown 变得更加宏伟壮观。
We really hope that, as Chinese Americans, we hope that BC government and all the people can help us to preserve Chinatown. All these traditional Chinese culture will make Chinatown an even more magnificent place.
Chinatown 的中国居民也居住在这里的居民也以此为荣。
As residents of Chinatown, we are very proud of ourselves.
现在我住在401K 的博物馆的住户，现在有一个最重要的问题，我要提议一下，就是电梯的问题。这个业主对我们居住在里面的住户相当的不友好。为什么？电梯时常的坏，而且这个电梯有4部电梯，4部电梯里面没有一部是完全好。
I am a resident at 401K Museum Square. There is one important concern I'd like to raise here. That is, the management team is not friendly to the residents at all. The elevators broke all the time. Among the 4 existing elevators, not a single one is working properly.
而且呢，就处于半瘫痪的状态，而且我们的居民住在里面，大部分是老年人、中老年人，但是每天都是提心吊胆的。为什么呢？总怕有什么意外惨剧发生。
So pretty much, the elevators are not working, and the residents in that building are mainly seniors, mid-aged, and we're very worried that some major accident will happen to us.
现在我恳请 DC 市长办公室的所有人来协调，为我们保护我们的博物馆广场的住户，能有安全的地方居住安全，尽最大的把这个事情提到最大的议程上来。我代表所有的博物馆广场的住户，衷心的感谢今天能有这么大的会议提上这个议程，谢谢。
I'd like to ask the mayor's office to help the museum square to make sure we have a safe place to live in, to make this a priority. Finally, on behalf of all the residents at the museum square, I'd like to thank this wonderful opportunity to have this town hall to share with you our concern. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is Lynn Young-Rue from Museum Square here?
Good afternoon, everyone.
我是来美国已经在DC已经20年，可是我住在401K已经有10几年了。
I've been in DC in the United States for 20 years. I've been living at 401K for 19 years.
现在我住在里面，房东不好，给我们不怎么好，现在就里面搬走。现在首先问题是很大的问题是电梯，就这个不行。真的电梯如果是有老人家生病了，从8楼到1楼，那居民车就在楼下，你就等于下来就是走了没办法1楼停，1楼停，1楼下来至少要20分钟。
Yes, the landlord of our building is not friendly to the residents. They ask us to move. As you heard, elevator is a major issue. Well, imagine if a senior is ill and there's an ambulance waiting downstairs and there's 8 floors. And at each floor, the elevator has to stop for minutes. So it may take 15 to 20 minutes for the resident to even reach the ambulance.
卫生里面都没有做，每家每户老鼠跟蟑螂多的要命。
And there are a lot of roaches in the unit.
还有一个空调问题，那现在这么热，他都没给我开空调。我们现在老人家就很特这方面。
Another issue is air conditioners. These days are really hot. The air conditioners are not turned on. Older people have a very hard time.
跟他们讲，跟他们教育很多了，他们都懂。里面住了很多老人家，这个没办法。首先他们都不清楚的英文，所以说也没办法沟通。有的东西坏了，在这样的保安讲，他也不管，除非是自来水爆。
We talk to them, they do not listen, and they do not care. And the resident has really have no solution. The residents do not speak the English, so there is communication difficulties, and the landlords do not care. Maybe only if when the tap water, the pipe exploded, then they would do something.
所以说我们现在希望市帮助现在大家帮忙解决的事情，公安区的住房问题。可是呢，我们这些人呢，房东对我们帮，就是一定骗我们帮，可是有的东西就是不管。所以我们现在你们住的大部分老人家，差不多都是有些手脚有些困难的，走路不方便的。
So we really hope Mayor's office, the city government, could help the residents at 401k Museum Square. The management, they cheat us. They say they would help us, but they do not do anything. Most of the residents are seniors, they have mobility issues, they have difficulties walking.
所以说，我们住在里面，大家都很希望市里面大家帮忙这些。 你对常老人家住在这里面的叫房东叫，拿我们走，现在房东就是赶我们走，我不骗一个房子走了就是一个。
So our residents really hope the city can help the senior residents here and to talk to the landlord, not to kick us out. Currently, what the landlord is doing is they coerce the residents to move.
我们住在这些视角里的大家，他们帮忙我们很多人，也在很看，也就是房东他自己，他也想高价卖给你，所以他们不管。
We're really grateful for Shani Shi's help to the residents, but the landlord, they do not care. They want to sell the property to someone else with high price. They don't care about us.
他那个关键哪一家出的房子高，他就准备卖给，所以说，我们里面住的人真的累，谢谢你帮忙，谢谢。
The landlord is prepared to sell the properties to whoever that offer the highest price. So we really ask all of you to help us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next. Tracy Jen from the Wallach House.
大家晚上好，各位长官，各位工作人员，还有我们的居民，大家晚上好。
Good evening, everyone, our colleagues, the residents.
我的名字是 Tracy Jen，我是1996年从台湾移民到这来的。我们很喜欢这个地方，我们很感谢上帝把我们从别的国家带到这个国家，这么美丽的国家，这么自由民主的国家。我们也很感谢所有的为我们这个 Chinatown 贡献的这些所有历代的这些市长也好，还是地区政府也好， 我们住在这里真的是很开心，也很高兴。
My name is Tracy Jian. I immigrated to the United States from Taiwan in 1996. I really enjoy it here, and I thank God who brought us from another country to this beautiful country with freedom and democracy. And I really want to thank all these years, all the DC government, mayors who helped us in Chinatown.
我现在是住在华乐大厦，我相信大家都知道我们的华乐大厦是很有名的，现在办的 daycare 也办得非常非常的好，就是因为我们在这里面语言通，然后文化都完全是相同，当然里面还有一些别的种族的国家的人，但是我们大家彼此住在这里面都能够融合在一起，所以这个美国是个很伟大的国家，是个大移民，能够接纳各地方来的人民。所以我们现在就是向这个市政府也好，还是向这些所有的工作人员，我们表达我们一点Chinatown人的心声。
I live at the Wildlife House. You know, Wildlife House, as you know, is a well-known building, and currently the senior daycare is very successful. The reason it is successful is because we share the same language and we share the same culture. We do have people from other ethnicities. We do blend it very well. This is the great thing about the United States. It takes in people from everywhere. So we'd like to use this opportunity to share with you, with the city government, with people working for the city, some of our thoughts.
现在我们大家就是政府工作人员也好，还是所有这些支持这个活动的这些所有的工作人员，还有我们的居民，大家能够共同能够想出一个好的方法，怎么样复兴，怎么样振兴我们DC这个Chinatown的这些经济。
So I'd like to ask people from the government, our colleagues, all the residents, let us find some ways, some solutions to revitalize Chinatown.
以前Chinatown的时候，这个中国人的居民是1000到3000人之间，因为现在的各种的这种移进来的这种企业也好，还是这些商家也好，慢慢的这些就搬出去了，现在人数越来越少了。但是现在我们就希望说，大家能够广施吉利的一起来想一想，怎么样子，可不可以在我们的Chinatown这边保持我们中国人的文化元素，再加上一些别的种族的元素，一起来共同的复兴我们这个Chinatown的这些经济。
There used to be between 1,000 to 3,000 residents in Chinatown. But because of all the moving of businesses, a lot of people were replaced from Chinatown. The number of residents are getting smaller and smaller. So I'm again asking all of you, let's find a way to preserve the Chinese culture here in Chinatown, and together with people from other ethnicities, let us revitalize Chinatown.
譬如说现在夏天来了，天气这么好，可不可以就说大家想一想，能不能办一个什么在Chinatown办个夜市，让所有的人晚上都能够出来走一走，然后顺便逛一下这个夜市，把这些经济慢慢给它带上来。
For example, summer is here, weather is beautiful. Can we actually start a night market in Chinatown? So people walk around the night market, that can really help the economy of the business in Chinatown.
还有就是可以在Chinatown这个地方，就是建一个大型的亚洲杂货店，不用跑到这个维吉尼亚、马里兰这么远的地方去，让我们Chinatown各种族的人都能够都能够享受到我们中国元素的这种杂货店。
Another suggestion: can we establish a big Asian food or Asian grocery market so that we don't have to go to Virginia or Maryland, these far away places, to shop? If we have a grocery store in Chinatown, then people from all races would be able to enjoy the Chinese groceries.
希望在这个同时能够帮助设置，如果有这种机会设置的这种晚上的夜市，还有这种杂货店，当然这个自然也很重要。但是我相信我们的居民都是很善良的，只是有的是因为有的人失业了，有的人失去家庭了，有的精神有疾病的，还有的有生病的，还有无家可归的。我们常常看到在外面真的是很可怜的，就希望这些执政掌权的人手上有资源的能够重视这个问题，把他们安置在他们需要去的地方，不要让他们身上有病的时候在这个社区里面传播，或是他们有什么意外发生的时候，突然发生了什么意外的事件，影响到这些居民的安危。
So if we have the opportunity to open up a night market, to have a grocery store, that would be great. And security, safety is very important here. We understand life is difficult. People may be encountering unemployment, homelessness, mental illness, physical health issues. That's why we ask people who have the power to take care of these people, to put them in a good place for them, for these needy people, so that for these people who may be physically, mentally ill, they have a good place for them, so they will not be just hanging out in this community, which may pose a danger to the residents here.
好，谢谢各位。还有一个，刚刚我听到401K 的，虽然我们这里住得很近，我们也有很多朋友、亲人也住在那里面，我们也希望401K 的他们的这个管理人员能够大家跟这个我们华科大厦也好，还是别的这个公寓，能够大家集思广益，能够商量一下，看怎么样把他们401K 的这个公寓也把它带入轨道里面，因为这个。听到他们的这个很多的这种问题发生，就是会影响到人的安全，还有他们的精神生活。尤其是里面有残疾的、有老人的，还有这精神有问题的，就祈求他们这个办公室里面的这些工作人员能够正视这些问题。
And finally, I'd like to say to my fellow residents from 401K Museum Square, and I hope the management at 401K Square and building like ours, Wallach House, I hope that we can all get together and think of ideas, think of ways to help 401K to go back onto the right track to help with residents. It is really important, especially for people who have health issues, mental health issues, people who have disabilities, senior citizens, and these are important for them.
最后还是要谢谢今天这个会议的主办单位，还有所有的这些工作人员的辛劳、时间，还有所有的居民的参与，谢谢各位，晚安。
Finally, I want to thank all the organizers for this town hall, for all the staff, for all the participants, all the residents. Good night.
Thank you very much. We have 2 more tenant speakers. The next is Yangjian Chen.
大家晚上好。
Good evening, everyone.
我在美国20多年了，都在唐人街。
I've been in the United States for over 20 years. All this time, I'm in Chinatown.
我的名字叫陈月江。
My name is Yuan Jiangchen.
我在唐人街的时候，20年前，唐人街非常繁荣热闹。
20 years ago, as I recall what Chinatown was like, it was a very lively place.
当时中国的商店好多，有大华呀，什么好多店，现在全部都关门了。
Yeah, back then there were a number of Chinese grocery stores, such as Dahua, but now all of them are gone or closed.
现在像我们这个老年人， 去买一点需要的东西就没有地方买，要到好远的地方，要坐巴士啊、地铁啊去买。
For seniors, if you want to just buy something you need, there's nowhere we can go locally. We have to take the bus, take the subway to places far away to buy these things.
但是我们又早晨出去，太迟也不敢走这个路。在我们唐人街，现在那个流浪者是好多，好像在地铁口啊、巴士站旁边啊，就是流浪者。
But if we try to go outside in the morning, we're scared to be walking outside because there are a lot of homeless people in the neighborhood. You see them at the metro entrance near the bus stop.
所以说，我们华罗人老人啊，一到天黑就不敢走出去，又怕危险。
And the seniors living at the Wildlife House, when it's getting dark, we're scared to go out because we're afraid there might be some dangerous situations.
好像在中国城，本来我们是好热闹的地方，现在变成没有人，中国人。以前好多好热闹，现在我走出去，晚上也不敢走。
So Chinatown used to be so lively, but now there aren't many people left at all. There aren't many Chinese people. And in the evening, I went out, and there was hardly anyone.
好像我们到美国以来，我们那个英语也不好，到去买东西的时候也不会讲。但我们在这个时候，最好政府在唐人街一带要保持唐人商店。
So we immigrate to the United States. Our English is not good. When we go to the grocery store, we do not know what to say. I hope the government can preserve the Chinese grocery stores in Chinatown.
我们华罗老人最希望市政府领导又多加我们唐人街的商店、杂货店或者超市，我们老人就可以买到我们有用的东西。
So the seniors living in Wildlife House really hope that the city government could help to set up Chinese supermarkets, grocery stores in Chinatown, so seniors can buy things they need.
我们现在唐人街中国店也没有几家了，最好又多加几个商店，我们以后唐人才会活跃起来，大家热闹欢住在一起。
Currently in Chinatown, there are hardly any Chinese grocery stores left. We hope that there can be some additional ones so the Chinese living here can go out and shop to make Chinatown lively again.
如果我们长滩没有那个超市、那家鞋店，那我们老人根本就没有地方去买东西。有需要的东西，我们还要走到好远，还要到马里兰、维吉尼亚，还要坐车，起码来回也要1个小时。
Without the supermarkets and grocery stores, we cannot get what we need in Chinatown. We need to take the public transportation to Maryland, to Virginia to shop. It would take at least an hour.
好，谢谢大家。
Thank you.
Our last tenant speaker is Yuming Chan.
Yeah. 我是 Chinatown
是华乐居委会会长。
I am the president of Walnut House Residents Committee.
多谢市政府，
I want to thank you to the city government.
多谢市长办公室，
Thank you for the mayor's office.
多谢那个拯救唐人街联网的同胞们，
Thank you for the colleagues from Safe Chinatown Alliance.
多谢社区的代表们。
Thank you for all the representatives from the community.
我是1975年到美国的，
I came to the U.S. in 1975.
我在唐人街找到一个特别的家
Oh, I found a special home for me in Chinatown,
，Walnut House。
Walnut House.
现在唐人街就是最大的唐人街，就是华乐大厦。
Well, you can say right now the biggest in Chinatown is actually the Walnut House itself.
我们唐人街以前大约有3000左右的唐人在这里住，
There used to be around 3,000 Chinese residents living in Chinatown,
包括这个整个家庭的人。
including a whole household.
我们鼎盛的时候就这么多人，但后来慢慢的小孩子长大了，就是唐人街也没有什么发展，就是都搬到Virginia跟 Maryland 去了。
So that was the peak time for Chinatown. Later on, children grow older and they see Chinatown did not really grow, so they moved to Maryland, Virginia.
我怕这个情况如果继续下去的话，唐人街华乐大厦也没几个人了。
I am really worried. If this trend continues, there will be hardly anybody left in Walnut House also.
我希望唐人街能够多一点连锁店、体育馆、公寓，我不反对在唐人街这个地方多一点发展，多一点投资人过来。
I hope that in Chinatown there will be more stores, more stadiums, more residential buildings. I am not against development. I welcome investors to Chinatown.
这几年市长做得很好，因为他在DC 盖了很多新的房子，发展很大。
In recent years, the mayor did a great job. They built a lot of new buildings in DC, and that brought a big development.
我希望再多建几家那个低收入的公寓。
I hope there can be more low-income residence buildings built.
如果多一点低收入的公寓，就会多一点人再回流到这中国街跟这里附近。
With those low-income residence buildings, we hope that more residents would return to Chinatown and the neighborhood.
因为中国人我们都是新移民，很多都是在美国都是做那个低收入的工作。
That a lot of the immigrants from China are newer immigrants. A lot of them are working on the low-income earning jobs.
因为现在很多低收入公寓，他们最少的收入调查都要在2万多左右，2万以上。我希望有1万5以下的低收入公寓，因为很多人退休之后没有拿那么多的收入。
Currently, a lot of the low-income residence buildings have this requirement. The income, according to research, is over $20,000. I hope there can be some buildings that cater people with income that is lower than $15,000, because a lot of seniors do not have high income.
自从唐人街最后一家那个中国超市搬走以后，是在2003年的时候。
2003. Yes. The last supermarket in Chinatown moved away in 2003.
我们现在如果要买中国我们喜欢的中国人喜欢的东西，都要到十几迈以外，到维吉尼亚跟 Maryland。
If for the residents now want to purchase something they need to go somewhere over 10 miles away, in Virginia or Maryland.
因为我们中国人都希望在唐人街能够有一家，不要很大，小一点也没关系，就是卖中国货的这个蔬菜的地方。
We as Chinese living in Chinatown, we hope there can be a grocery store. It doesn't have to be big. It's okay if it's a smaller size, but they will sell some Chinese vegetables, produce.
因为老人年纪是越来越大，他们也不能可能到很远地方走很多路。
The seniors are getting older and older. It is not easy for them to go to a far away place to walk so much.
我们华乐大厦每个月有一次去维吉尼亚 Fairfax 那里买那个中国的菜。
At Walmart House, we arrange once a month for the residents to go to Fairfax to buy Chinese groceries.
我希望就是在唐人街能建立一个附近能够购买中国产用品的地方。
I hope that in Chinatown area there can be a place where people can buy Chinese groceries.
还保留这个理发店，跟多一点中国的餐馆在回流到唐人街来。
We hope that we can also preserve the current hair salon, hairdresser place, and the current Chinese restaurants. Hopefully, some Chinese restaurants will come back to Chinatown.
谢谢大家。
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much for all of your thoughts and your recommendations and concerns. Really appreciate it. Now, I know we're it's at 7:25 right now. If you need a moment to get up from your seat and stretch your legs, feel free to do so now or at any time. Also, there's water and tea in the back of the room. If you like to get a refreshment, or if you want to raise your hand, I'm sure someone from the network can help get a cup of tea for you. So feel free. Yeah, let's do a stretch. Yeah. Well, stretch. I like that, and I don't know how to stretch. Panel time. We are going to start. We are going to now start our panel conversation. So feel free to get your water and your tea. And at this time, I invite Sharon, Ted, Thomas, Kevin, and Shadi.
Hello. I know we're very excited. If everyone can sit down, we will start the panel. Okay. Thank you. We are starting the panel now. It's very thrilling, I know. Thank you. Okay, here, back to you, Jen.
Hello, everyone. We're going to get started now with the panel conversation. So the next half of this evening, before we close, we're having a panel conversation for approximately 45 minutes. And then we're going to open the floor for some questions. And the network is going to pass around index cards where you can write your questions down, and we'll collect them at the end of the panel conversation to answer some questions. For those of you also tuning in virtually, you'll also take an opportunity to take at least one or two questions from our virtual participants. So, hello. I'm gonna stand here, I guess. First, if I could have each panelist have a 1-minute introduction for each of you. Tell folks here a little bit about yourself and what you do. I'll start with Shani.
Hi, is this working? Okay, great. Hi everyone, my name is Shani Shi. I am an artist, an arts educator. I've been involved in the community in that capacity for a while. But first and foremost, I have been working as a tenant organizer across the district, working very closely specifically with the Museum Square Tenants Association and the Wall House Tenants Association since 2017. And so as a tenant organizer, I have worked to provide technical assistance to the residents in organizing, coming together to address displacement and other issues in their buildings, and understanding and exercising their right to moving through different processes. So we're happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
大家好，我是李翠华，我是ANC 代表人。我15年搬到这个城市，我有2个小孩子，
Hi, everybody. My name is Michael Schenkel. I am the ANC Chair, the Advisory Neighborhood Commission Chair. I'd like to really say thank you all for being here tonight. It is so very important that community is engaged in conversations and decisions in community. I have been living in the Chinatown Penny Quarter Gallery Place community for 12 years, and I have said repeatedly that Chinatown is the heart of our city, and everything happens here, everything crosses here, and we, over the last couple of years, have neglected our heart. And we need to refocus, and this is an opportunity for us to refocus and revitalize the community. So thank you for having me this evening.
That was so incredibly well said, Michael. Like you stole everything I wanted to say. Hi, everybody. My name is Jared Price. I serve as president and CEO of the Downtown DC Business Improvement District. Our organization is proud to stand in partnership with many in this community about how we can help to make it as clean, safe, and economically viable as possible. It's been a pleasure having served in capacities to help bring about a number of different events and different things here in this part of town. As Michael said, Mr. Schenkel said, this is the heart of DC. And I'm just incredibly honored to be here tonight. I appreciate all of the resident speakers who shared your opinions and your voices. I was sitting here clapping and cheering when you talked about the grocery store and the night market. Those are two things that Downtown DC did we think are critical for this community. So we're really encouraged to hear your feedback. We've been engaged in a number of different capacities over the course of many years, but especially in focus last year and beyond, thinking about the future reimagination of the downtown DC community. And so we've been engaged in what we call our downtown action plan, that was cited in one of the slides earlier tonight. I'm happy to talk a little bit more about that plan and some of the recommendations in it. And I also have been honored to serve on the Gallery Place Chinatown Task Force, which also has been engaging with many stakeholders across the community and the city. I'm really thinking about the future of this area. And so I think it's really important to center and hear your voices, and I'm looking forward to the rest of this conversation today. So thank you for having me.
Hello, my name is Ted Gong. I'm the executive director of the 1882 Foundation. And what that is an education nonprofit, which has an office just right here. And what we do is try to promote awareness of Chinese American history and heritage. And we do that through 3 programs, actually, programs. One is collecting oral histories and preserving historical sites. And then the second thing is that we work with education development, whether with Richmond or with the districts here, on curriculum and lesson plannings and teacher workshops. And the third thing we do is we work with Asian American, Pacific American museums and historical societies, looking at the best practices and collaborations of how we tell our stories. It's really good to be here with these guys. These are really good friends that we have done a lot together with, and I have so many friends here. I'm so happy to be here. But we're talking about developing Chinatown. And I sort of had this card that I picked up, and it's DC Chinatown Rediscovered. And you notice that we put a big square blank there, and that's because we want to reimagine this place. We don't want to just sit there and just go with the regular stereotypes and so forth, but let's look at how we can rediscover this Chinatown and how this Chinatown fits in the rest of downtown, the downtown development. I was so happy yesterday, Michael, at the ANC, when people were pointing out the size of what we're looking for is reaching out beyond Chinatown, all the way down to up to the convention center, down to the mall. The connection with the mall, how do we do that? Going east and west. I think that's one of the things we really do. If we're going to develop Chinatown, you can't do Chinatown in isolation. It has to be done together. And one of the things that I think, if I had do it over again yesterday, I would have said that my vision of what the Chinatown would have been was that this is going to be one of the most vibrant downtowns in all of America. It should be, as it should be for the capital of the United States. So we are on the verge of doing it. I'm so proud to be with you guys and all you all to try to make that happen. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kevin Tian. I'm a new restaurateur business owner in Chinatown on F Street, 927 F Street. My restaurant is called Moon Rabbit. We are a Vietnamese restaurant. I moved to DC back in 2012, and my first job in the city is actually in Chinatown, working for Jose Andres. I've also worked in restaurants in City Center for David Chang, and I did my first restaurant pop-up in the National Union building. So I'm very familiar with the area. I love the community. Thank you for welcoming me to this meeting and to be part of the discussion on how to preserve Chinatown and also move it forward at the same time. I'm looking forward to learning a lot from the community and continuing to be like an ally for the different generations that live here and moving it into the future.
Thank you all for being here today. My first question is really just to do a little scene setting first. We talked a little bit about the history of Chinatown. Ted is a great storyteller. Ted, can you tell us about Chinatown? What was it like, you know, in its really prime? Set a scene for us.
You know, I'm not sure if I'm the best person to ask because there are so many more capable persons. I see Penny there, who's a fantastic storyteller. I kind of point her out if you ever want to. But we've done a lot of things together, and I think that at the beginning we had a pretty good summary of how this Chinatown is. What it was and what it was like when it was first over at Pennsylvania Avenue between 3rd and 4th, and then it was redeveloped. Then moved over here, how it came over here, starting with the Chinatown Garden. It used to be the On Leon House. That was where, because the On Leon Association moved there, Chinatown followed, and that's the way it is. So there is a lot of issues. I think many people talk about the gentrification issues, the 1968 events that caused a lot of people to move, the various, as my colleague when he does Chinatown tours talk about the different associations, the family associations, the territory association, Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association companies, all those things on the second floor of Chinatown are all still actually fairly active in many ways. So don't discount Chinatown. One thing you constantly hear about Chinatown, whether you start in 1930s, when people said Chinatown is going to disappear, they moved over to here on Each Street, right? Then a few years, maybe another decade, they said Chinatown is disappearing, and the Washington Post put out the article, the last years of Chinatown. 10 years later, that same magazine put out another article that says, again, the last of Chinatown, and we hear that constantly. I think, so that always occurs, but I think what you should not, I think one of the perspectives we really want to look at is, don't just count the residents, count the activities here. The New Year parade is fantastic. We had how many people? 40,000 people or something of the sort. And you get so many people there. And people, even if they move to Maryland or Virginia, there's a desire to come back to this area. You know, you need, and those are the things you really need to look at. How do you make sure that that flow continues? You don't necessarily have to be just for a chop suey restaurant or something. Those are good. But there are a lot of other places around the city that does that. What we can do here is provide those cultural institutions, make this a cultural touchstone for people to come back, find a nice restaurant that is here and let it grow into something new. That's what we want to do. So that's one point I would say, not talk about the past, but talk about what we want to build. And one of those things is think about this place as dynamic. It's a place to draw people in, right? And that's not just for Chinatown, but the whole downtown, move it around.
Thank you, Ted. Appreciate it. I'm gonna ask a follow-up question to Shawnee. Shawnee, you've been working with the tenants in Chinatown for a long time. And I'd be curious to hear from you, what have you seen as contributing factors to the displacement of Chinatown and the community?
Yeah, to connect it to what Ted has just said, I think that that's right. You know, it's critical that the city put everyone put heads together on how to preserve the beautiful and dynamic cultural life in Chinatown. But I think what we are hearing today from a lot of the residents who have shown up is, and really the state of the neighborhood is that the crucial role of that the residents play in that cultural life of Chinatown. So, when we talk about displacement, when we talk about why we only have 300 Chinese residents left in Chinatown, how does that happen? It is true, I think folks over the years have voluntarily left for different reasons, but by and large, a majority of displacement is happening through housing displacement. And it happens tenant by tenant, building by building. So I have a lot to say on this. I'm going to try to run through some of the major facts. But really, the residents are the backbone of the cultural life and identity of this place. So without them, what are these activations for? So the displacement of the residents, of the Chinese residents in Chinatown, this is a story that is mirrored in all other communities of colors, Black communities, brown communities, all across the district. You have, with waves of development, property values rising, long-term communities of color who have lived for generations in existing affordable housing displaced because landlords have this intense incentive to push residents out in order to either sell buildings for luxury development or flip individual units that might be under rent control. So these are in pursuit specifically of speculative exponential profits. In Chinatown, you have, kind of two buckets of housing. There's row home in row home housing. So in and around the Chinatown area, you have row homes that are run mostly as informal housing, where workers live, vulnerable people live. But the landlords there, they don't give written leases, and they kind of take advantage of the vulnerability of the residents in their housing. And when it comes time to sell, and in my tenure as a tenant organizer, I've seen multiple of these houses, dozens of residents pushed out because clear violation of tenant rights. Corporate landlords like Bush Companies at Museum Square, this has come up multiple times, and I really want to drive this point in. Drive this topic in. There have been countless tactics over the last 10 years, starting with, I think Nasha had mentioned this earlier, it started with an opt-out of the building's Section 8 affordability contract, which guarantees the ability of all residents in that building to only pay 30% of their income. So it guarantees building-wide affordability. So the landlord started out by opting out of that contract, attempting to demolish the building to build 800 units of luxury condos, violating tenant opportunity to purchase act rights by setting a purchase price so far beyond market value that it was struck down by the courts. And that was in 2016, y'all. So, over the last 8 years, it has been displacement through deferred maintenance, harassment. Okay. I'm sorry.
Okay. Sorry. Slower.
Okay, sorry, I got excited. I'm so sorry. Thank you. I apologize. Okay. So violating tenant opportunity to purchase act rights by setting a crazy price that was struck down by the courts, and then displacement via deferred maintenance. So all the elevators breaking down, lack of maintenance, lack of cleaning, and then harassment of individual residents, and offering small sums to move. So in DC is lauded as a city with very strong tenant protection. But the issue comes with enforcement, accessibility of enforcement mechanisms, and initiative, right, from decision makers to provide the needed support for tenants to actually be able to exercise and defend their rights. So I'm just going to speak a little bit about that. If that's okay. So after years of dealing with bad conditions and hostile living environments, frankly, these bad conditions and buyouts are really the last straws that push residents out of this neighborhood. So when it comes to displacement pressures, it's important to remember that yes, there is a housing code, but housing code enforcement mechanisms, there's a need to discuss how those can be stronger, how those who are working to kind of revitalize Chinatown can support those efforts, right, to hold landlords accountable to those laws. There's also, affordable housing developers that can help stabilize and preserve properties, particularly through the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act. But in DC, many advocates have brought to the fore that there is a lack of adequate district funding to actually go through the preservation deals needed to preserve and stabilize. So, there's a lot of different policy related factors kind of impacting the displacement issue, and I also want to highlight that because of the lack of tenant representation in the spaces where conversations are made. I understand that the bid represents at least 51% land owning stakeholders. A lot of the ANC meetings take place, but there's not language interpretation at many of them. So I think the attention and the initiatives do not focus on these issues, right, that residents are experiencing because they are not at the table.
Thank you very much, Shani. That's a really good comprehensive look, especially since how long you've been working very closely with the tenants and the community here. I want to kind of have another context question. I think we're all here today because we care a lot about this neighborhood and what happens. And I think at this moment in time too, there's a lot of news. There's a lot of pieces of information, maybe a lot of gaps of information at this time. So I would like to first ask a question about the task force. What is the task force? Who's in the task force? And what are your objectives and responsibilities? And I think I will, between Jaren and Michael and Thomas, if you can, bring some visibility for the residents, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, happy to try to do it. I'll try to be somewhat brief in how I describe this. The Chinatown Gallery Place Task Force that the mayor assembled in December, in many ways was a group that she called together after the announcement was made about Monumental Sports considering moving the arena, moving the sports teams from the existing home at the Capital One Arena to Northern Virginia. When that announcement happened, the mayor wanted to make sure that we had a clear strategy in place, really to address two things. One, to make sure we could do what we can to keep our sports teams here as one option, but two, if those teams did choose to leave, there would have to be a plan in place for what happens with that arena. One of the worst things that can happen for this community is to leave a building of that size sitting without a lot of active use. One of the benefits of that arena, amongst many, is just the many number of visitors that it brings through the 250 some odd sports games and entertainment events that take place and draw people from around the region. That building, the events that it brings generates more than $65 million worth of tax revenue to the city each year. And so it's a really viable part of what helps fund the city's budget and helps support many of the types of services and programs that we know are important throughout the city. So really important that we had a good plan in place for that site, particularly if the teams were to vacate. The mayor had that group chaired by three really amazing and dynamic women. Our deputy mayor for planning and economic development, Nina Albert, is one of the lead chairs, and it's co-chaired by two private developers, Jody McLean of the Edens Group. Edens is very well known for its development of Union Market, and then Debbie Ratner-Salzberg, who is one of the leading developers behind the group that did the work at, Yards Park in the Navy Yard community. And so these three women are the chairs of this group, and they've invited a number of people to serve as part of the task force. I was extended an invitation by nature of my affiliation with the Downtown DC Business Improvement District, really with a focus on a particular stream of work, which is how we activate the community through great world-class level events, events that highlight and celebrate our local community and culture, and really thinking about how we can continue to support and bring visitors to downtown, but also really thinking about our clean and safe work, which is something that the bid started back in 1997 through our ambassador program. If you ever see the folks in the red and black jackets cleaning and providing safety support, that's one of the programs of the Downtown DC bid. And so part of our work was looking at how we make sure for the people who live here, work here, and visit here now feel safe and feel that the environment is clean. The totality of the work of the task force has largely been around talking to and engaging with as many people as possible about the desired vision for the future of the neighborhood. What started as just the site of the arena has really evolved. Obviously, we know our sports teams are staying, and so we're excited about that, but there's still a need to make sure that this heart of the city, that in some ways hasn't gotten a lot of love in recent years, that we're very intentional about the investments that are made in this community. I would echo what Shani said. I think it's really important to make sure that the voices of everybody in the community are not just a part of that, but are really centered in that. I know there have been some conversations already that the task force has held with members of the cultural community, including the 1882 Foundation and other entities and partners and stakeholders in this community. But I think it's just the beginning. In terms of where the task force is and some of the goals that they have, I think the intent is to have a plan for sort of big picture vision of what's possible for this community. Actually, this Saturday, there is a community meeting taking place at the Martin Luther King Library at 10 o'clock a.m. It is open to the public and encouraged for as many people, residents and anyone who's just interested in learning more to come and to hear some of what has been received in terms of feedback and how that has been proposed into big ideas to support this community. Last thing I'll say, and I said I was going to be brief, and I'm probably talking way too much. The last thing I'll say is that some of the things that have come up and emerged through these conversations and through some of the past work that we've done at the Downtown DC bid, understanding the cultural and historical significance of Chinatown is huge. We've heard that from so many stakeholders, more than the 10,000 people who've been engaged through surveys and focus groups and all the different conversations. We know that preservation and celebration of culture and history is key, and I think that we want to make sure that that happens in whatever the future entails for this community.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question too, and all three of you feel free to answer. How was the task force decisions made of who gets to be in the task force? And the second question, why is there developers but not residents on the task force?
Great question. I wish I could say I know the answer to that. I was asked to serve in a capacity to be a part of the conversation. I will say that while I don't know that there are residents who are invited to be a part of the task force, it's a relatively small group. There is representation from resident communities. So the downtown DC bid, we have a number of residents who are a part of our bid community, and so we try to lift up and be a part of amplifying some of those voices. And Rita Lee, who does a significant amount of work from on behalf of the WAVA House, she is a part of that task force as well. So just wanted to share that.
Yes, that was a huge question that we had as well, on how the folks got selected for the task force. The ANC was kind of left out of that process, even understanding that the task force was going to be launched until last minute. And we also kind of sounded the alarm, like, where are the residents on that? Many times downtown, thank you, many times downtown DC is seen just as offices and businesses and theaters and sporting events. And they don't see the residents as part of that process. We see that in legislation, in zoning, et cetera, where residents are kind of taken out of the picture. And that is a continued problem that we wanted to make sure that residents' voices got heard. We approached the task force. We asked them how residents are being involved in this. And last evening, we held a community listening session with the task force so that they could get feedback from residents. I do know that that was not the only one that happened. There were other activities in which residents were engaged in that process. I'm not necessarily privy to that area.
Thank you, and I do appreciate that all of you were very open and willing to have the conversation with all of us today. I will say that the network did invite the co-chairs of the task force, and they declined to come here today. And so I did want to make that as a note for the audience as well.
I'm here on behalf of the community, and they have conflicts.
I see, thank you very much.
And I'm here on behalf of the deputy mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll wait till question and answer and comments, but thank you for raising your hand. I have another question too, regarding decision-making as well and processes. And I want to shift this to recommendations. We have a collection of 45 years of different comprehensive plans, small area plans, design guidelines on how to place Chinese motifs, somewhat, mostly incorrectly, in Chinatown, but not preserve Chinatown businesses. What makes it different this time? What will we do? What are accountability measures? What are policies that you all as leadership for this community will push to actually have actionable outcomes that say what we wanted to do in the past 45 years that has not been placed yet?
I'm gonna take a start with this. This is a big question, a huge question. From an advisory neighborhood commission, I think I want to put emphasis on the first word, advisory. So our role is to make sure that resident voices are heard at council, at the mayor's office, at other groups where legislation and regulation may be talking about, or policy development. One of the things that Thomas and I do as ANC commissioners is we always ask, what are the measures? How are we going to measure success in a project? And when we ask that question, a lot of individuals, there is some hesitation on, well, what do you mean success? It's going to work, we're gonna implement it. But we wanna see if it really has impact on a community. I think that we have lots of plans that have been developed. We have lots of guidance, and They primarily sit on shelves and are referenced at times, but the full implementation, I feel, is not there. The driving force of implementation is not behind them, which is unfortunate. And I think from our perspective, from an ANC commissioner perspective, my role is to ensure that individuals have feedback and can communicate with our city leaders to ensure that dissatisfaction with the speed, the content, its implementation process is heard and can somewhat be addressed in that process. I hope that kind of answers your question slightly.
At a high level.
I want to add, a small, big detail to what Michael just said there. I think it'll be different this time around because there's so much investment that's going to be taking place in downtown, in the arena, within the next few years. The mayor, City Hall is aware of what could happen if we neglect the city, the downtown core. People leave Monday night sports, wanted to leave. But the mayor and city council came together and said, no, we want you to stay, and we're going to put money into downtown through the downtown plan to revitalize downtown, but also in the arena to make a statement that we believe, the city believes in the future of downtown and in Chinatown and the arena. So I think this time it's different.
If I could jump in real quick and then allow the rest of the panelists to speak. I think I would like to add to that. It's important to kind of just pause and take a look at how it's not been different already. And I want to uplift what I'm hearing from residents, I'm hearing from the community. So, we talk about the task force, and as Jen mentioned, there's no resident representation. It's great to hear that there's a desire for that. And I also want to encourage nuance when it comes to who we're talking about when we're talking about residents. There's a tendency to exclude the most vulnerable, the working, the poor, the unhoused, who are central to our city and the fabric of our communities. And there has not been, up to this point, proactive outreach, effective outreach to make spaces accessible to people who need their voices. So this is, there needs to be more communication. Well, I'm sorry, when we talk about the communication channels and including voices, it's not just inviting maybe one representative from the Chinatown community. It's also understanding who makes up the community, whose voices are usually excluded, whose voices are not heard, and actively working to make the spaces accessible to them. So when it comes to the task force meeting that we just heard about yesterday, there was no language accessibility there. And that's something that definitely will need some change. If we want to be inclusive, if we actually want to hear from people who make our city what it is, that's going to be needed. And it's a question of who deserves to live here and who deserves to be heard. Consistently, it is low-income, working-class, poor folks who completely shut out of these spaces. So yes, I just want to add that to the conversation.
Alex, a request for Saturday. Could we get translation services at the library?
Yep, I made that request earlier today.
I want to turn it now to talking about, as you all are advisors, you have influence, right? And you're going to be advocating for certain issues, initiatives. I'd like to talk to now about kind of a collection of things that have come up. One is small businesses, small local businesses, culturally relevant and relevant businesses in the Chinatown neighborhood. And this is also in combination with both the Downtown Action Plan and also development largely. Development happens to us and we don't necessarily have any say in it. Downtown, the hotel is being built currently, and I think there is stress about what happens to those small businesses at the hotel. In what ways are you supporting, incentivizing, creating the infrastructure for small local businesses to thrive here? And this is what will you be advocating for? And I'm gonna actually, since we haven't heard from Kevin yet, as a restaurateur in the city, what are you championing in this space?
You know, for me, I feel like my personal position is, I'm kind of in the middle, right? I have become kind of a well-known chef in the city. So I think kind of like anything is like, I have a voice that people like to listen to, even though I don't like to listen to my own voice. But for me, what I think my position moving forward is like really we've been really ingrained in Chinatown and like learning a lot more from every day from like Ted and all the residences. And then I do have the benefit of being invited to some of these meetings, and then a lot of these developers that are actually on the board have asked my opinion on how the like Chinatown should be like developed and move forward. And the first meeting that we were in actually a few weeks ago, that was like really great to have like Tony Chin there and Rita Lee and some other members of the community. And I would say it was a very passionate conversation about like how Chinatown can be preserved, but also like kind of like move forward to the future. I think that was like kind of like the first conversation. And for me, I'm just trying to figure out like what the main needs of like the community are. And the one thing I've heard consistently over time is we need like a grocery store. I think it's insane that we bust the residents like once a month to get groceries, right? And for me, what can I do best to like serve the community, right? And as someone who's an entrepreneur, I say, let me use my position as like the well-known chef to find a space where I can open a grocery store. And I'm actually sending in a letter of intent to sign, to start lease negotiations to open an Asian grocery store on 5th Street. But obviously opening a business is not very easy. Growing up, my family had a small convenience store that was a grocery store slash like a Chinese takeout spot. I've run restaurants. I've worked in like many different businesses. My family were refugees from Vietnam, and you know we were like very food and grocery insecure all the way up until I was in college, right? Relying on like government assistance, the assistance of like local churches. So I know what it's like to be without the resources to have like a successful like upbringing. So you know I don't like seeing like my community, the API community, in that kind of position. So for me, I'm just doing whatever I can personally to provide like these resources. If that means I have to be the one to open the grocery store, I'll open the grocery store. If I'm the one that needs to like figure out how to raise enough money to buy a building, like that's what I'm going to do. But that only begins with me like learning about what everyone's needs are, and then I can use what I learned to go to people like Jiren and AMC to get their support to help me find a path forward to get to that end goal.
That's helpful. I have a follow-up question to that. I think, how might like the full keys or the China boys in the neighborhood, be also competitive in this space when, Kevin, I've been trying to get into your restaurant, I can't, so I'll try. But when you get popular and you're hot and you have that power, that is amazing, and I think that's really folks like you to champion. What can be done and supported for those shops that they're there right now tonight, probably closing up shop. They're working 24 hours and don't even know that there's meetings like this or folks to even interact with, language barriers, technology. What is something that you will be advocating for in order for those types of businesses here to thrive? Those are our immigrant businesses. This is the people who land here in DC and bring us culture in trying to make a living and a life here.
Yeah, I'll kind of jump in, and I probably won't answer the question fully, but in my dream world, I see this like, so Tima and I started like a nonprofit called Chef Stopping API Day a few years ago during COVID. And my dream is, how do we get, Chinatown back in the hands of API people? How do we own the properties and like not all these like big developers coming in? Not that I don't like Edens. You guys are my landlord at one of my places, so. But I think the only way to create like long-lasting businesses is you have to own the property. And as someone who is I just signed a 10-year lease, and I'm 36. I'm already worried about when my lease ends in 10 years. I know that rent's going up, and what am I doing for work? So I think it's like up to like the next generation, like Shawnee, myself, with the help of the people who have the resources, to figure out a way for us to like have generational wealth. And that's the only way I think to be able to like sustain these businesses. So if the city wants to give me some land, I'll take it.
I know we're running out of time too, and I do want to hear from the rest of the folks, especially Jaren and Michael and Thomas as well. What are you going to advocate for relative to small business and sustaining small businesses here? And two, and I'll throw in this, housing. How are we going to retain and support current affordable housing, better affordable housing now into the future? And Sean, again, sorry.
Maybe this will help generate some inspiration for answers. I just wanted to add some context. The Housing Production Trust Fund, which was around $100 million from last year, stands to be cut at least 40% this year. And this is the district's pot of funding going towards the preservation of affordable housing in the district. There stands to also be a cut for neighborhood-based services, so housing counseling and other, other important housing services for residents to be able to stay in the city. So there's a lot of challenges ahead. So I say that because we're talking huge numbers that are about to come into the neighborhood. 500 for the expansion of the arena, $400 million for the downtown action plan over the next few years. So, I think this is a really important opportunity to ensure that some of that funding is responding to the needs that residents have brought up today. And I will say that Museum Square, as many of the residents have brought up, this has been a fight that has gone on for over a decade now. And there have been many opportunities, I believe, for decision makers, and not just decision makers, but developers, private groups, that are working on transforming our city to get involved in these conversations. And I think now is another really important opportunity. The Museum Square residents have a strong team of advocates they have solutions to propose. They need support from everyone here to pursue those solutions. I know so far they've tried to reach folks on the task force. They've tried to reach folks in this room without any success. So, you know, I hope that that can change. And I hope that you all will, you know, commit to making those changes happen. Making those changes happen. And I want to also mention that there is sometimes the requirement to include affordable housing and new construction is cited as easy. That's a good thing. I don't want to point out, you know, a 10% requirement in a building of, 400 luxury units is not sufficient to respond to the needs of these cities. I also want to uplift that, you know, when we talk about what is affordability, there are many different definitions of what that is, but, you know, a very specific definition that actually responds to what the poor and working class are going through in this city. And so we're talking about affordable housing that is dedicated to supporting low to very low income families, which is below 50% of the median family income. So very specific, we do not want, you know, conversations around affordability to get fuzzy or lost. We want to be very specific about what we need to do.
So I'd like to really quickly say a few things, shifting back to small businesses. I think that what we should do, one of the things we should do in addition to affordability housing, is actually put more attention on what can we do for small businesses. If you give the monumental property $500 million to stay, why couldn't you take $500 million and give a tax break to anybody that opens up a small business that has 5 people in Chinatown for so many years? Like, I don't really thought we'd start with that kind of a principle, looking at how to get small businesses in here and give them tax breaks. You don't even have to give them. And there are tax breaks for businesses that are responding to things which are constantly heard about, which is about grocery stores or anything like this. You should give them priority and getting things clear. But there are other things too, small businesses. There are, for example, right now we are working on how do we preserve a couple of historical sites, old places that are owned by people. Acupuncture store, a grocery store that's in the corner, a Guanyin temple. These things are all owned by individual property owners, right? There is a program, and I would say that to whoever's from the city or from this, that it was called the Great Street Project. It is still existing. So each individual property owner, if they develop something new or redevelop something, then they can get a certain amount of money to help them match money to build up their store and upgrade it. Maybe get some extra business advice and so forth like this. Chinatown is not included in the Great Street Project anymore. And it took, I think, Councilwoman Pinto a couple of years ago to try to bring that in, and then 2 years later it was gone. So why is that? And I've been looking at that Great Street Project for several years. It is a very short-term project in terms of the way it's announced. I'm not sure if these individual businessmen in Chinatown even know it exists, let alone if it exists, how to get the help to get applied for it
It's really
and get it
important.
done like
I
this.
think it's really important, Ted. Thank
So-
you very much.
so-
I know that we have to wrap up because if we don't leave by 8:30, the church gets charged money. So we want to make sure they've given us an incredible free space this evening. I know you had more of everyone's time. What I want to do also, there might be some additional questions. I'll hand this off to Ren to close this evening, but we may collect some more information. I want to get a promise. If you have more public meetings, let everyone know, find a way, messenger, birds, whatever you need to do.
Saturday, May 4th, MLK, we'd love to have people there, yes. And I'll also just put in a shameless plug, the Downtown DC Bid, State of Downtown Forum is taking place on Thursday morning from 8 to 10. Breakfast will be served beginning at 8. That's at the Hamilton Hotel at 14th and K Street Northwest. And I just want to say really quickly, because I've been somewhat quiet and sort of wanting to respond a little bit. I know we're running really close on time. I'll cover the fee for whatever the church is doing. I just really want to say this last point. I appreciate the opportunity to hear from all of you in this room as I think about the affordable housing question that came into play. You have to give credit where it's due. The city does invest a lot in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. It is something that is very important to the mayor. And I do think that there is a need, as we think about what the reimagined downtown will look like, it has to include more housing. And so that is something that is at the forefront of the plan. But I'd love an opportunity to share a little bit more. And I just want to say, if there's interest in having deeper conversation around this, I would love to welcome that so that we can hear more from residents in the future.
Thank you. I think in closing, I just want to reiterate a lot of the things that we've talked about. I think first, when we think about progress and new buildings, luxury buildings, 10%, any of these requirements, we have to remember the buildings like Museum Square, Wallach House, existing buildings. We talked about Berry Farms. What are we doing for communities that are established, that have roots here first, before we just create new buildings? So I think there's a huge distinction, because when communities are pulled out, it's not just business, it's just not units, it's the entire community. So let's definitely have that conversation. Let's definitely do that. Second, I think we have been left out, right? The residents have been left out. This is a change. I think, who here, raise your hand if you think you've learned something new today. Amazing. And I think all of us want to live together, we want to thrive together. At the end of the day, we just haven't communicated well enough. So please commit to continuing this conversation. It's truly just the beginning. And we want to see progress. We don't want to see complete displacement of our Chinese communities. We know this, but it has to happen through communication and dialogue. We've been begging to, have folks come represent, and we don't want to do that anymore. Let's make sure that we're having conversations fluidly. And finally, just talking about making sure that we're preserving things. There's lots of policies, whether it's racial equity policies within the comp plan. There's lots of ways. Come and help us translate these needs and challenges to what works. So that is another commitment that we'd like to ask. And so in closing, thank you again. Thank you, all of the residents. Did I miss anything?
Yes. What do we do? What's next?
Oh, also, yes, thank you. So we had a bunch of Q&A, and we had a bunch of really great responses. Could we email everyone here and continue to get some answers that we can flood back to all the residents that are here and all of the members that have joined? Brilliant, you've heard it here. Thank you so much, and I will close.
Thank you for the Chinatown Network for organizing tonight's event. We couldn't have this conversation without this group, so thank you. Good night. Thank you.